Chapter 20. "Jabari!" Ben shouted, and as one, he and Jabari were on their feet. Jabari grabbed his bow, but Ben ran empty-handed toward Issika. She sat sleepily as the man above her hesitated. When Ben was 2 steps away, a spear whistled through the air from behind him, not from Jabari, but Gavi. The spear went wide, missing the man, but giving a clear message, and the man backed up a step. Issika blinked at him. "Hyder?" she said. Then her eyes landed on the second shape, just beyond the light of the fire. "Jack?" She scrambled up off the ground and held her blanket out in front of her. "What are you doing here?" "Poisonlanders," Jabari breathed, his face hard. "Why do you trespass in Maween?" "We don't want to do you harm," Hyder said. He was a short, broad-shouldered man, very like his son Jack, the boy from the village who had bullied Ben all his life. "Nirloth, the priest of our village sent us to retrieve these waybreakers and bring them back for punishment. It's the only way to get out from under the wrath of the goddesses." "How did you find us?" Issika cried. "The goddesses give help to their priests. Or didn't you know that?" Hyder sneered. "They want you, so they came to Nirloth to tell where you could be found." Ben froze, shocked. Not retrieved as children, but as criminals. Not because his father wanted them, but as more sacrifices to appease the endless hunger of the goddesses. His head spun with the pitch of the horrible music telling him how wrong it was. "No," he said. He stood very tall and looked at his former bully and the man who was the bully's father, the coward who had tried to take them in the night. In the shadows, more men moved. Of course there would be more. 2 men were not enough to take 3 children over the miles they had crossed. "We won't go." "You can't escape the goddess fate, boy," Hyder said. He smiled without humor. "She will never let you go." Ben remembered the ugly, blank stare of the goddess in the temple. He remembered wiping the dust off her head, bird droppings off her hands. Ben had given her fresh flower petals, dabbed perfume on her feet. He had burned incense for her, rung the bells to wake her. "I know fate," he said, "better than you. We won't go with you." He sensed Gavi and Jabari, alert and aware beside him. Iba sat on the ground near the fire, her eyes wide with fear. Issika still stood with her blanket held out in front of her, her head bowed. How many men were in the shadows? "Capture them," Hyder growled, and then many things happened at once. As Hyder lunged toward Issika, she threw the blanket she held into his face, and Ben tackled him. Jack lunged at Iba, and she screamed. By the time he had her by the shoulders, Gavi was there. He delivered a swift kick to the back of the boy's knees, and Jack fell. Gavi sent another swift kick to his head that toppled him. Iba jumped back as he fell, looking up at Gavi, hands over her mouth. Ben didn't hear what she said, though, because he felt someone behind him. It was a large man, a stonesmith from his village. The man looked stunned by what was happening, but determined to capture Ben. Ben evaded his large hands and ducked under him to leap away. Jabari took Ben's place and punched the man twice in the face rapidly, and the man backed away, a hand to his bleeding nose. 2 more men lay on the ground near Jabari, holding their faces. These men weren't fighters. They were workers. Hyder had extricated himself from the blanket, and he held up a hand. "Enough," he roared. "We were not instructed to fight, only to bring the waybreakers home. We weren't aware that your new companions were your guards, Issika. Or should I say, honored Issika?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. Issika flinched. "We're not going to fight to take you. We don't have the skills these boys have. But Issika, Benim, I appeal to you as daughter and son of the temple you serve. Come and receive your punishment. Take the curse from our village and onto yourselves, where it belongs." Ben squared his shoulders and stared back at Hyder. He knew the answer he needed to give, without any whispering doubt. The man's spirit was full of sincerity, but beyond, in the minds of the goddesses. Ben heard evil. Beside Hyder, though, Issika drooped, curling on herself. He knew she was crying. Beniam knew he needed to give the answer in his heart, because she might falter now, within reach of the poison of shame. "No," he said, "we will never go back with you. Your goddesses will never have us now. They have no part of us." Hyder stared back at Ben, and hatred broke over his face. "Very well," he said. "I see the way workers are repaid, when they take garbage from the roadside. Nirloth is a fool, and your mother was evil to deceive him." Beside Ben, Issachar flinched. Ben put a hand on his sister's arm to keep her from speaking, sure that she would offer to go back if she did. Hyder turned, gesturing to the others, who slowly picked themselves up and limped away. Just before they left the clearing, Hyder turned to Jabari. "We have known of your lands and ignored you. You can count us as enemies now. Never assume that your borders are safe. We're not fighters, but the goddesses are good teachers." Jabari's eyes flashed, but the men disappeared into the night. Issachar collapsed on the ground, with her head in her hands. Slowly, the drums in Ben's heart ceased their clamor, and his body returned to stillness. He helped the quiet come back by gazing at the stars, vaguely aware of Iba beside Issachar, stroking their older sister's back as she cried. The stars were lovely and pure in the sky, in the right places. Calm filled Ben. Jabari and Gavi quietly sorted blankets and picked up pots that had fallen over in the scuffle. As the cold purity of the stars soothed him, Ben felt that he was the ruler of himself for the first time. He smiled at the sky. It was mid-afternoon the next day when they came to the first houses in the city. Issachar was heartbroken by last night's argument. She couldn't help thinking of people like Jerutha and her unborn baby, people who were good and true, even if they were poisoned, people who would bear the brunt of the punishment for Issachar's wrong. Issachar had been ready to turn and go with the men from the worker village. She didn't know how Ben had found the courage to deny them, but she was glad for it, because they were still on their way to Kitao. The fight had left her feeling nervous and sad, and as they came to the outskirts of the city, her stomach seemed to be filled with small, restless creatures fluttering against her ribs. The sight of the first homes calmed her. They were pleasant and ordinary. The houses were short and wide, with flat roofs where laundry hung in colorful lines. People came out of their homes as the little group passed, shouting greetings to Jabari and Gavi, looking at Issachar and her siblings with curiosity. As they walked farther into the city, the path beneath them became a real road, paved with wide stones. Many different kinds of trees lined the road, and the houses got closer together as the travelers traipsed farther into the city. Issachar took a longer look at one house. It was made of earth, painted a bright white, with intricate holes cut into mudwork edging the flat roof. 3 girls sat on a wide porch with cups in their hands. 2 of the girls were black, their hair done in what looked like hundreds of tiny braids, and one was white, with freckles and straight brown hair that was braided as well, though with fewer braids. All 3 girls had beads in their hair. Flowers climbed the walls of the house, and a vegetable garden grew in the yard before the house. Issachar stopped walking to look. The plants were a riot of color: tomatoes, orange flowers, and beans tangled in and around each other, and Issachar sighed as she thought of her mother in the garden. At a word from a tall woman leaning against the doorway, one of the children ran to the garden. She picked a few tomatoes and held them out to Issachar. Issachar laughed and shook her head, but the girl continued to hold them out to her expectantly, so she took the handful of tomatoes, giving them to Gavi when she caught up with the others. "That was kind," she said, "but I didn't mean for her to give them to me. I only wanted to look." "It is our way," he said. She had plenty to share. The buildings grew taller as they came into the city, some stacked 2 floors high. Iba's eyes were round as she skipped along beside Jabari. There were children everywhere. "There's no school today," Gavi said when Issachar commented on it, "so they're free to roam." "They can go wherever they want?" "Yes, of course, if they tell their parents." Issika had grown used to how much Gavi and Jabari looked into her eyes, but she was taken aback by all the eyes she met as they walked along the wide road. She was the girl who had always wanted to stare into people's faces, but the sheer number of eyes that looked into hers overwhelmed her. She reminded herself that eyes couldn't steal anything from her, couldn't really see her soul. Issika's feelings had been mixed as she eased into the new way, old fears rising in her suddenly and without warning. She took a deep breath and held her head up. She had nothing to fear from meeting people's eyes. They were only parts of the face after all. Stone pots of flowers and fragrant herbs were clustered around some of the houses. Everywhere Issika looked, the only walls were the walls of the buildings themselves, with nothing protecting the gardens. Sometimes there were short fences, spindly things that a child could step over. Most of the doors were flung open. People sat together outside, on porches or their front steps, eating and talking. Flowering trees lined the streets. Issika had never seen a place so lovely, so welcoming. She felt a longing that threatened to bring her to tears. She wanted to belong to this place, but she was a stranger here, a Poisonlander. She saw many people who must have been rescued, white-skinned like Gavi and the people of the worker village. And she saw children who looked like they came from other places entirely, with light brown skin and deep-set eyes, strong brows and long bones, or long eyes and high cheekbones. The people were dazzling in their sheer numbers and differences. They wore colorful clothing of many shades, reds, blues, greens. Some people wore sashes or scarves wrapped around their heads, and Issika saw long robes and dresses or simple pants and tunics like the clothes she wore. It was beautiful, but overwhelming, and Issika felt her heart speeding up as she grew apprehensive. A strong breeze whipped at the edges of her tunic, and Issika looked up and caught her breath. The Othra! They had returned. Issika waved at them, her heart full of happiness at seeing the familiar birds. Niril soared down and touched his talons to her shoulder for just a moment, not quite landing on her, but flapping his wings near her face, surrounding her with warmth and peace. The night's sadness and some of her nervousness disappeared. The Othra followed the travelers, flying overhead, and people came out of their houses to lay food down for them. The birds descended and ate bright fruits and bread, then lifted in a storm of wings, their feathers flashing all colors. Ahead, a building rose above the others. Issika drew a breath. It was large and imposing and lovely, sculpted out of brilliant white stone. It looked as though it had grown from the earth, with tall towers reaching toward the sky, a bell on top of the tallest spire. Gently pointed bulbs crowned some of the towers, and holes were cut out of the wall's upper edges, with curves and flourishes, like the ones Issika had seen on the homes in the city. The building had a long, wide doorway in its center, and from there fell back into walls with windows and towers on either side. Iba breathed a small sigh and slipped her hand into Issika's. "It's beautiful," the little girl said. "Are we going there?" Jabari nodded. "That's the palace where the elders live. They'll know how to find Kital." They reached the beautiful palace more quickly than Issika had expected. Her heart pounded in anticipation of seeing her brother, and her hands trembled. The palace was even lovelier as they drew near. Its walls were stippled with the texture of many carvings, making it look like a living thing. Bright flowers spilled out of the open windows of clear glass, and ponds filled with colorful fish flanked the steps they climbed. 2 guards stood at the door, swords sheathed by their sides. Issika glanced at the swords, feeling weaponless and a little afraid, but the guards smiled at Jabari and Gavi, bowed to them, and then motioned them through. Issika frowned, a tendril of doubt sneaking into her mind. "Why did they bow?" Benyim asked as he and Issika passed the guards. Issika shook her head. "I don't know," she said. As soon as she stepped into the palace, Issika felt it sigh. She stopped, shocked. The building itself seemed to hum and settle. She looked around at the others, but no one else appeared to notice, so she shrugged it off. They walked through a hall that had lofty, airy ceilings and murals covering the walls. Issachar wanted to stop and look at every panel, every picture, but Jabari strode toward a large pair of open doors at the end of the hallway. And Issachar was fine with going quickly because her heart ached with longing for Kital. She would find time to look at these paintings later. At the doorway, Gavi glanced at them once, an apology in his eyes. Then, as Issachar's heart sped up again, he and Jabari walked through.